Okay, enough about Rocket League. Let's talk about the book. I did pull up the Google Doc because if you do want to take notes, even if you are reading in a textbook, I suggest taking notes in a notebook or whatever. If you have your own version of the book and you want to highlight and write in there, that's to me the best thing to do. Or you can highlight right on the Google Doc. It's up to you. But there will be some sort of a culminating project on this. I don't know what it'll look like. I mean, I have less people in class than outside of class. No, yes. So we'll see. We'll see what that ends up looking like. But on the board, I did put the things that I wanted you to pay attention to for this section of the book. So the stuff that I want to draw your attention to the most are the characterization, the symbolism, and then some of what we learn about like the history of the world. Now we're going to learn a lot more in the next section of reading. But starting just from the very beginning, I told you the hearth is what contains the fire if we're looking at literally the title. The hearth contains the, it doesn't even have it on here. So part one is called the hearth and the salamander. And the hearth is what holds the fire. And the salamander, I told you, is unaffected by flames, right? It can run through fire and not die. Okay, so immediately, what is our salamander? Like, what do you think? And they call the fire truck salamanders too. So whenever they reference the word salamander, they're talking about their fire trucks. So who's our salamander right away in this book? Yeah, Guy and other people like him. The firemen who seem to be unaffected by the destruction they cause. They can live in this destruction and they're not affected. So we have this symbolism pretty heavy right away. And then the first thing that Guy says is it was a pleasure to burn, right? So right away we're like, okay, this guy's, he's not affected by the flames. He's not affected by destruction, the pain that he causes other people. Okay, so what do we learn about his character? Somebody tell me, what do we learn about his character in this first 15 pages? Yeah, Ben. Yeah, he's very intrigued by, you think about those people who, what's the word? The people who set fires, like arsonists. But that's actually what I was thinking of. And I was going to say pedophile, and I was like, that's not right. Pyromaniac. I knew it started with a P. So thank you for saying that. So anyway, people who are obsessed with the flame, and he stares at it and he's like obsessed with this flame. He's 30 years old. He's been a fireman for 10 years or 20 years. No, 10 years, right? Since he was 20. And when he started when he was 20. Okay, so he's 30 years old. Yeah, that's on page 5. Since I was 20, 10 years ago. Okay, so he's about 30 years old. Personality wise, what's he like? He's like a brick. Yeah, there's no personality, right? He's like whistling on his way home. And on page 2, so I don't know where that is on here, but it says, thinking little about nothing at all in particular. Like he's just there doing his thing. When he gets into his bedroom, he knows exactly what it looks like. He's done the same thing every night. Yeah, that's true. He ends up not having a normal night, but he thinks about nothing ever, right? He's just there. You're right. He is kind of like a brick. He gets less brickish as we continue. Okay, so that's Guy. Remember, I told you to pay attention to these images of light and dark. So, like when we meet him on page 4, when the description's happening, and I don't know where that is on the document, but it says he has dark eyes. He smells like kerosene. Every time they mention him, he has the dark colored helmet on. He has dark hair. So we have this idea that he He represents the like not so good part of society. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere comes this neighbor, right? So this is Clarice. What do we learn about Clarice? She's not a brick. Yeah, she's 17 and crazy. I love that that's how she describes herself, right? So guy's like, who are you? And she's like, I'm 17 and crazy, right? So she is the not so normal person. To us, she's pretty normal. Like she carries on a conversation and wants to talk and chat. And he's like, you are crazy. He even does say, like, you are an odd one, aren't you? But on page 5, so let's see where that is on the document, is where we see the major contrast between Guy and um, Clarice. And they're like, the author goes back and forth describing one and then the other. Himself, dark. She has fragile milk crystals. Like her face looks like fragile milk crystals. He is dark complected. She's electric. He says that she has like electricity in her. And then this is important. So just this contact with this girl. Let's see if I can find it on the document. This to me, I think you might want to jot this down somewhere, that just this one interaction with her, he says one time as a child, oh yeah, I can do Control F to find a word. Oops. There we go. You guys are so much smarter than me. So he says right here. So he's described as dark. She's described as milk crystals. But then just this one interaction with him, he has this memory, right? Which is significant because what does Guy think about normally? Nothing, right? They don't have connections to people. In a few pages, you'll learn that he doesn't even remember meeting his wife. Like they just exist. So he has this one interaction with Clarice, and all of a sudden it's like, I remember this one time when I was a child, this like one moment of comfort or whatever with his mom, where the power was out and they were not distracted by technology. And he had this moment with his mom. And so that's what Clarice brings back to him immediately, just like her presence and her warmth brings back that memory. Okay, so that's pretty important to pay attention to the effect that she has on him. Okay, so then continuing on, we do learn a little bit. She asks, is it true that firemen used to put out fires? What does he say? No, it's always been this way. That's what we do. You can see that he likes his job at first. He's like, this is what we do. On Wednesday, we burn Whitman. On Friday, we burn Faulkner. We burn them all to ashes. And then he's like, no, no, we've always burned. So he doesn't know. And it seems that she does know a little bit more than him. And he asks her, you never stop to think about what I've asked you. I mean, she says to him, I'm sorry, you never stop to think. Like you just respond. You never stop to think. So we're seeing how robotic he is. Okay. We also learn that people don't walk, right? They drive quickly. Everything's blurry. What do they say? Do you remember what they said about like billboards? Yeah, they had to make them longer and longer and longer because people drive so fast that they don't pay attention to what's on the billboards. Okay, I'm glad you brought that up. On page 7, they talk about being a pedestrian. Now, here's the deal. Ray Bradbury has a short story called Pedestrian. In this short story, a guy gets arrested for being a pedestrian. So this is a connection back to one of his other short stories. But her uncle got arrested for walking. No, he was being a pedestrian. Why was he arrested? For being a pedestrian, which means he was walking. So then at the end of page 7, she drops the bomb on him and says, are you happy? Right? So that's right here. This is very important. This is already the catalyst into the entire story. because he goes into his room, which he describes as being a tomb. Notice that they still sleep in separate beds. In the 1950s, husbands and wives slept in separate beds. And in this book, they still sleep in separate beds. Yeah. If you watch TV shows from the 50s, the husband and wife will be in different beds. Yes, they have their own beds. No, they're in the same room, just separate beds, like as if they're like brother and sister. Yeah. He's on the side of her bed. A lot of people, when they read the book, they think, oh, they're so disconnected, they don't even have the same bed. But I think that Ray Bradbury just never imagined a world where people would share a bed, I guess. I don't know. In the 50s, that's how life was. Okay, but some things to notice. Notice that to get into his house, he used a fingerprint to open the door. So again, things like that have kind of come to fruition. Think about how you open your phone, unless you're Colby Pickle. A lot of people use fingerprints, right, to open their phones. So we're seeing a lot of these technological things that he brought to life. And then in complete darkness in his room at the end of page 9, he says the narrator says he was not happy, he was not happy, he was not happy. Right? So right away we're like, okay, things are going to change pretty quickly for Guy. Okay, so then what ends up happening? She overdosed, right? Notice that she uses the seashells. I told you the seashells are like AirPods. Every single night she puts them on. She listens to ocean noises. That's how she falls asleep. She's done it forever. She normally takes sleeping pills. He was not surprised to see the pill bottle. He was surprised to see that all 30 pills were gone. Okay. And then the last thing I do want to talk about really quickly is this thing that happens to her body. So what do they call the emergency room? And he just sends out technicians, not even doctors. And what do? Yeah, Ben. Yeah, so they pump her stomach and they replace her blood. But it's so casual. Did you catch on to that? The one guy's just like smoking a cigarette, doing his job. And Guy is like, what are you doing? And he says, let me find it. This is important because this shows how messed up their society is. Yes, yes, I think it's 9. Oh, here it is. It's on page 13. It says, hell, the operator's cigarette moved on his lips. We get these cases 9 or 10 a night. Got so many starting a few years ago. We built the special machine. Okay, so we are so jacked up as a society that overdose is the most common run that these technicians take. Do you know what the most common run that paramedics today take? Exact same thing. More than any other thing that a paramedic does. My brother-in-law is a paramedic, and he goes on about 5 ODs a day when he is working. So again, we see Ray Bradbury really like in tune with what the world is going to be like in the future. That we're so disconnected and unhappy that the most common thing that they have to worry about with people medically is overdosing. Interesting. Just so you know, fun fact, the first stomach pump happened in 1967, which is about 14 years after this book. Okay, and then the last thing I want to talk about is on page 14. He's really weirded out because he says somebody else's blood is inside of her. Like, that's weird. And then he starts thinking, he's like, if only, and those 2 words like throw him into this memory of this one encounter with Clarice. He goes outside, right? Is that in this part? And he like stares at her house. Is that, yeah. Yeah, and there's people in there talking, and he's like, what are they talking about? He just wanted to be included. And again, we see the moonlight on her house. So, like the lightness and the brightness in the windows, it is very evident that this is what the world should be like, because it's like a spotlight on their house. And then his spiral begins. There's a drop of rain, he thinks about Clarice. Another drop of rain, he thinks about Mildred, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. He doesn't know what to do, so he just puts himself to sleep, right? He doesn't think about Clarice in a creepy way. So many people think that, and it gets worse. Like as it goes on, you're gonna be like, what is happening? But he just has never met anybody like her, so she's intriguing. But nothing creepy is going to happen between them. Okay, so this is what I want to do, you guys. I really want us to get to page, like, my original goal was 37. It's like 22 pages. But I really think it would be really good to get to 45. We'll go to 37. It's fine. So by Monday, I don't know. Can you make it to 45? It's just a little bit longer. 15. Well, that's a great time to read when you're sick. I need to pause this. Do you hear what I'm dealing with? If you're a mom at home listening, this is your children. They're whining. Okay, let me see. Colby, I love your pickle phone. Yeah. You shouldn't be embarrassed. Your pickle phone is amazing. Okay, so here's what I'll compromise with you. We'll get to 37 by Monday. And then by Tuesday, though, we're going to 45. So if you're really intrigued, but here's the deal. Between 37 and 45, something major happens that you cannot come in and spoil for people. So if you like keep reading past 37, you've got to keep your mouth shut. Well, you might be quarantined anyway, so you might not be talking to people. But well, that's what I want to make you go to 45, but you're all whining. I think you can too. It's so okay. Thank you. It is really intriguing, and something's going to happen that you're going to come back and be like, "Mrs. Ray, are you kidding me?" Let's hit 45. You have 18 minutes right now. You read so fast, Ben. You can't complain. 45 by Monday. That you have so many days. So many days, the whole weekend. 45 by Monday. Okay, so I'll tell you where that is on the Google Doc in a second. Listen, if you're in a book, 45, like go to page 45 where it says he did not open the window, and then you have like the little break. I need you to stop there because that's right after you learn something and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I just learned that. Okay. If you are